In favor of the motion approval of the January 13, 2025 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Council courtesies. Do we have council courtesies this evening? Any council courtesies? Seeing none, we have no proclamations. Any council reports?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to use this.
That's okay. We appreciate your efforts.
I don't know how to use it. My computer's not plugged in. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's not working.
We'll ignore the beeping, but if anybody's an expert on we've lost our.
Press the down button.
Sounds like a bird.
Councilmember Joy was our designated timer expert, and we no longer have her, unfortunately. So we'll keep pressing ahead. No council reports. City administrator reports. Chris has had a conflict that will be joining us later, so in his stead, Kevin.
Thanks, Mayor. I've just got a couple things tonight. Consent item agenda 1B as in boy. Title was revised to contract with Orion Planning and Design for completion of a land use plan and future land use map. And then a regular agenda item number 2, the zone change 1056 High Sierra. The developer has requested the application be withdrawn. And don't forget our February 3rd work session will be at the new City Council Chambers at 316 North 26th Street up on the 5th floor. And there were no ex parte communications after 3 o'clock today. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kevin. Would you repeat your first item that you mentioned? Was it 1G?
Yep, so consent item 1B, the title was revised, and basically the title was contract with Orion Planning, and then the terms and design was added.
I thought you said 1G, which B is in boy. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, Council, we'll deal with the item 2 when we get to that, on that. So we'll move on to our next item, which is public comment on non-public hearing items. So tonight, that is items 1, 4, or 5. If anybody would like to be heard on either any item on our consent agenda, which is item number 1, or item number 4, which is our Ward 3 appointment, or item 5, council committees. Mike, go ahead and you can do that.
I'm unlimited now because
Yeah.
there's nothing in front of me, right? Actually, is this on? Yeah.
So,
I'm speaking close. I just can't.
okay, Mike, if you hold on just a second. There you go. You're back on the clock, literally.
Perfect.
You're not
Thank
getting
you very
paid.
much,
Go ahead.
Mayor and City Council. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of agenda item 1E as an echo in support of the renewal of the contract Bayman Park Development Council to operate Bayman Park for another year. In your packet, you received the annual financial statements from 2024 plus our budget for 2025. A couple of highlights I'd like to bring up. We are not raising our rates again this year. It's been, I guess we're going into the 7th year that APDC has been reorganized and running it, and we do not feel that we need to raise the fees yet at this point. We had another good year. We brought in a little over $286,000 in revenue. Our expenses came out on the $229,000 for a net profit of $57,000 over the year. So we're figuring that our next year is going to hold. As part of the turf field, we committed to make sure that we had a reserve fund to replace it. That goal was $250,000 by time its 10-year lifespan's up. And I'm very happy to report that in a very conservative investment account at the end of 2024, we had $140,809. And so we're halfway there. It's a nice little piece of insurance to have it sitting back there. We're still in warranty, so we know we don't have to spend any of that money on anything there yet. I'd like to bring up the fact that we continue to partner with the high school kids running our concessions. Our manager's a high school senior this year. Our staff are all high school kids that are working in there. And part of that I think is just a great thing for the city is that these are kids that are high functioning, highly involved kids in all kinds of things that can't hold down a regular job. And they can't hold it down because they got academics, they got concerts, whatever it is. But they can come give us 3, 4, 8 hours on a Saturday, and we'll do this for 16 weeks out of the year. So it's a great way for them to get experience, for us to give back to them, and it helps keep our costs down. So that's one of the items that we do I'm very, very proud of. I'd like to point out that this will be the 7th year that I've been the Executive Director of Amon Park Development Council. In the 6 years to date, we have raised $2,036,797. Those are called user fees, right? But that's raising money. We ask for preschoolers up through adults to pay to use the park. So we are raising money each and every year. I think that's a substantial amount of money that comes in over that same period of time. We have spent $1.7 million for a net profit of $310,000. We've got $64,000 in the bank right now besides the $140,000. Where's the rest? It's in equipment, it's in assets, things that we buy, tractors, mowers, water tanks. You just, it's one of those things that unless you know how the sausage is made, you really don't realize how much goes into keeping that park up. And then lastly, I've got to thank our relationship with the Parks Department. We have worked so closely together, and Mr. Pig and his staff are great partners to work with, and we keep putting out a quality product. And I will tell you, people come to the park and they're constantly saying what a great place it is, and I'll always tell them it's not me, it's not APDC, it's this community effort, so thank you very much. I'd be glad to take any questions anybody has. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mike. Just for the record, I'll note that right before public comment, Councilmember Tisdale did join us for the record. So is there other public comment on any of the sub-items on our consent agenda, item number 1, or item number 4, or item number 5? If so, please come to the podium. Any public comment? No one is coming forward, so we will close the public comment period and move on to item number 1, our consent agenda. Are there separations? Separations from item number 1. Councilmember Bernice and Councilmember Aspenleiter?
I'm going to separate item number K. And I have questions on one K2 and one B. I'll separate those now because that's not going to work.
Okay, 1A2.
1A2 and 1B. Just 1B.
And 1B. Okay, so Colson Park north-south improvements and contract for Ryan Planning. And then 1K was second final reading, zone change 1059. Councilor Aspenleiter.
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask to separate agenda items 1K and 1L2 for the purposes of recusal.
Very good. Are there other separations? Any other separations? No one's indicating, so Councilmember Shaw?
Not a separation, but just for the record, Councilmember Aspenleiter, would you remind us why you were choosing yourself?
My company is involved in 1K, and there's reimbursements for my company in L2.
Perfect.
Very good, thank you. Any other separations? No one is indicating that. Is there a motion relating to the non-separated items? Councilmember Shaw?
I move to approve the non-separated items of the consent agenda.
Very good. Is there a second? Councilmember Boyette? Very good. And I'll just remind everybody so that the TV can pick us up and we can be heard on Channel 7. Please keep your voices up so that the microphone up above here picks us up. We'll move on to a vote. The motion is for approval of the non-separated items. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. First separated item is item 1A2, Colson Park north-south improvements. Councilmember Neese, that was your separation. Did you want to start us off, or did you have a
I
question?
do
or-
have questions about it, Mayor, I'm not sure who to ask, if there, Brad was one on.
Mike Pig is coming forward.
Okay, Mike, on this contract with Folsom Park, has the Parks Department or talked about turning this over to Yellowstone River Association to, allow them to use the money to really develop this park instead of developing it into a full service park? Because I've been out to that park, it's noisy, it's loud, air traffic, freeways, it's not a real conducive place to have amphitheaters and stuff like that. Have you talked to Yellowstone River Park Association? Are they interested in this park parcel at all to develop more into wildlife like they've done out in Dover Park and stuff like that?
Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council. So I have had a conversation with Yellowstone Park Association about taking over a number of projects. They're so invested in Dover and all their time commitment is going towards Dover that they're not interested at this time in undertaking any new projects.
So they could be interested sometime in the future if they're kind of complaining with Dover Park or something like that.
Councilmember Neese, that is correct, and we're more than welcome to working with them on that. If at that point in time, if they're interested.
Okay. And then there was also some changes between the master plan that was approved by City Council and this plan. I didn't see that in the memo of what those why those changes were taking place. I had sent an email a couple of weeks ago when this was on our agenda and pulled. I never got a response to those particular changes.
Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council, I apologize for that. I believe that I thought Brad had taken care of those. I was on vacation at the time, so I didn't have an opportunity to respond. As you understand, master plans are just a concept, an overarching view of what the park could become. When you get down into the smaller details of a true design, it starts to take into effect topography, access points, things like that. That's what the design is taken into effect, and so that's why there's some minor changes, little different placements of trails, and then also the gazebo has moved just a little bit.
Okay, so master plans don't need changes like that, and what's approved by the council on those master plans don't need to come to council for approval, or is this the approval of the changes that were done in the master plan?
Councilmember Neese, this would be your opportunity for those changes. Yes, there was a design, public input in on the design and all that, and so then at this point in time, this would be if you had some concerns about those changes.
Okay, it would be helpful to point out those changes so council know what's actually being, what we're approving in those changes. One of the changes was the parking for the boat launch. And it appears to me that I don't see a place where there's any kind of pull-through parking for the boat launch. Am I incorrect on that? It was hard to see, the design wasn't really complete on all the roads and access and stuff like that. It looked to me like there wasn't a place where you could back in your boat and then pull into parking, pull through and come back and get your boat again.
Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council, there is pull-through parking. It's changed and slid just a little bit. It's not right next to the river now. It's up off of the river a little ways. We did that mainly for because of high water and making accessibility issues, and we have to provide an accessible path to that. So moved it up closer to the restroom so that it'll be easier to put an accessible path.
Do you have to pull through, go back on the main road and enter the park again?
No, they do not. It just loops around, so they would back into the boat launch, pull back out, pull into the pull-through parking, and then when they're ready to go, they would just pull straight back out and it would loop around onto the road.
Okay, because it looked pretty narrow, and you're saying that that's a sufficient enough room to pull a trailer around and without hitting another car parked there or boat parked there.
Councilmember Neese, yes, according to our design consultants, they feel there's more than enough room to swing trailers through them.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. It says in the staff report, you don't expect to hire, the need to hire any more FTEs. When will you know this for sure?
Councilmember Boyd, Mayor and Council. So I know as of right now, we are not looking to hire any new FTEs. The plan is intended that it gets a lot of nefarious use down there. We're hoping that the larger increase in traffic is people coming to utilize the gazebo and the artist point and the trail will increase that activity, lower that nefarious activity, less maintenance on that side, more maintenance on the gazebo side. So we feel it's a wash.
Very good, Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I move to approve item 1A2.
Is there a second? Councilmember Gulick. Motion is for approval, item 1A2, consistent with the staff recommendation. Discussion now on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Now we'll proceed to a vote. Seeing no discussion, if in favor of the motion, which is approval, for approval 1A2, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
All members of the council voting in favor of the exception of Councilmember Neese, motion passes. Next separate item was item 1B, contract with Ryan Planning and Development. Councilmember Neese, that was your separation.
Yes, Mayor, can the staff explain to us again what the PPP is going forward with this plan?
Councilmember Lees, can you repeat that question? That's why this coming.
Yeah, the contract talks about the public participation plan. Can you, it doesn't define it in there, but can they explain again what this public participation plan is so that the public is aware of what they have to do in order to participate in this plan, in this program?
Yeah, Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council. So the public participation plan that this effort is subject to was the one that was adopted by council here several months ago, and basically covers what we ended up doing. We're trying to move towards one public participation plan for all of our public projects, but we had to make sure it aligned with what the new law calls out for this, which says, basically continuous, ongoing participation throughout the process, as well as documenting that process and such. So, yeah, there'll be a lot of public participation throughout this, both in larger public opportunities for input, stakeholder meetings, web-based tools, and such as we go through this whole effort. And we've specifically called out in the contract, it's required from the law too, that we will document all of that and be able to have the both feedback as well as be able to show where all that feedback was received and such throughout the process. So it's going to follow what you adopted, which basically incorporates all the elements that the state law also requires.
Okay. And so, just to be clear, why if the public doesn't participate in this when the finished product is, we're going to have a map of the city, of where the zoning is, what's been changed, and stuff like that. So if the public doesn't participate in these plans, that's the front end part of the process. If I understand correctly, is you have to participate up front. Otherwise, it's too late when those projects come to us. Like tonight, we're going to see a zoning change. Those development type things are going to be too late for them to complain. The public has to participate early. Is that correct?
Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, yes, for the most part, it's what will shift with this will be to administrative reviews and approvals based on what this council adopts as the future land use, the land use plan and future land use map. I would illustrate that the difference would be that if a development project comes in and applies to do a project in a certain area and it meets the land use map, the zoning, the options for zoning in that area, that it moves through that administrative review process. If a development proposal comes forward and the developer wants to do something that is not in alignment with that, then you actually do have to go into an amendment and it has to come to the council. So the idea is that map and plan show what the community wants to see where and what those uses are, and then that's how we'll go forward, mostly under administrative process.
Okay, thank you. And we're making the changes on this because the state is forcing this a city like us to have to make these changes. We're front end loaded with decision making, public participation, and instead of at the time of the decision. Is that correct?
Councilmember Neese and Mayor Council, yes, that is correct. It's to attempt to both. It's something actually that's done in a lot of other states. It just hasn't ever been done here in Montana. It's to streamline and provide that upfront. Yes, this is the vision, this is the land use, this is what we want to see as a community. And then,
I have one more question about the contract itself on page 15. It talks about the goals and objectives. It says, based on a comprehensive analysis, outcomes, and public participation, create goals and objectives that will guide the community in its land use decisions for the next 20-year horizon with the supportive narrative. And so I'm wondering if it's talking about, the council is still going to have control of the policy. They're not going to create the goals and objectives of this. The council is going to make that decision. Is that correct?
Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, yes, that's the idea is to have the community develop the future land use or the land use plan and future land use map. But those two big elements are something that the council adopts, and then we go forward based on them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Wyatt, I just want to follow up. The public does have a comment period, and they can come to the council before the council ever approves of it. So there is public input all the way up until we approve of a plan, correct?
Councilmember Kennedy, Mayor and Council, yeah, throughout the process to develop the plan and the map, yes.
Thank you.
That's the whole idea is to get that.
Very good. Councilmember Shaw.
I move to approve item 1B.
Motion for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Gulick. Discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Rathblutter.
Just one quick comment. I sent an email to Kevin and Chris about this yesterday, and Wyeth responded back. I raised the question why there isn't a fee sheet or a rate schedule attached to this, like there is with most contracts that we approve. Staff's comment back was that it wasn't included, but there's a hard cap on the contract. I think just in terms of consistency, this is one of those things we're going to talk about when we talk about how we solicit and contract. I think it's good for us to have those things included. I mean, we do it in most other departments. I think this is an area in which we should have published out the rate sheet so we know exactly what we're using and what we're up against. But I'm going to support it. Not any reason for me to hold it back, but just something to know.
Very good. Thank you. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Neese.
Yeah, I will not support the motion mainly because, again, I disagree with what the state, the way they changed the land use laws on this. And so I'm being consistent in my vote against what they've done in the state. But I know it'll pass. I know we're forced as a city to do it. I hope that they change some of this in future legislation because I believe this has really taken a lot of that public participation out of the process at the time of the event instead of 5 years in advance of the event. So, thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about this. Missoula, you might have heard, has already developed and passed their land use plan out of through their council unanimously. We're now hiring our third different consultant to put together the neighborhoods and growth plans that and this land use plan that all work together. We're doing this, we're going through this process because we have steadfastly refused to add the skills and expertise to our teams outside of public safety that we could really make this stuff happen quickly. And it's costing our taxpayers a lot of money. I'm not going to stand I'm not going to vote against this. I'm voting for it. We have to at this point. But as we move forward in this budget year and future budget years, we have to look at how do we smartly add the capabilities to our team that we can get through this stuff without having to hire hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of consultants every time we have to do something like this. Thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion? I'll just comment since it is the big picture here, and I certainly will approve it because I agree, we really don't have any choice in this matter. I share Councilmember Neese's concerns that it's going to hit the fan when people realize that there's a big development going up and that the a plan approved several years beforehand that they didn't know about says it's okay and it's being done administratively. That's for a later council to deal with, but I am a little concerned about that. But it does justify reminding everybody they need to be involved in this development process. and that the reason for it is not just to cause problems, but to speed up development and to simplify development for the benefit of the community and for developers, so that there's more certainty, less uncertainty, and the process can move more quickly, more efficiently, and keep down the price of housing. So there are good reasons behind it, but the devil's always in the details, and we'll see how it actually works out. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion is for approval of item 1B, the contract with Orion. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition were council members Neese and councilmember Tidswell, I believe. All other council members voting in favor, so the motion passes. Next item on the consent agenda is item 1K. Councilmember Aspenlider will be recusing himself on that. Councilmember Neese, that was your separation. It's second reading, zone change 1059 Zimmerman Home Place.
Yeah, I separated this out for a no vote since I voted against it the first time.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion on item 1K? Councilmember Gulick?
I move to approve item number K, the second final reading of the ordinance for zone change 1059 Zimmerman Home Place.
Very good. Councilmember Ripsis indicates a second. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Okay, Councilmember Boyette.
Just to be on record, we zoned this many years ago as neighborhood office. We thought that would be appropriate for that area along Zimmerman Trail, along the housing that lives there, and at least I and a couple other council members have been fought all the way by developers wanting to put in 4-story giant buildings, and we lost. My goal was not to have 4-story buildings against a street and farther back, and we've won a little bit of that, but I have to say I'm disappointed in the process going from neighborhood office to giant buildings.
Very good. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. The motion is for approval of item 1K. If in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition were council members Neese and Boyette, I believe. All other council members voting in favor with the exception of Councilor Aspenlider, who abstained. The motion passes. Then that concludes item 1K. Item 1L subparagraph 2. Is there a motion, Councilor Boyette?
Mayor, I move that we approve the bills of the week of December 30th, 2024, L2 as read.
Very good. Is there a second? Second, Councilmember Tidswell. Councilmember Aspenlider will be recusing himself on this vote. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with the exception of Councilmember Aspenlider, who did not participate. That brings us then to our regular agenda. Item number 2, Tony, if you'd read that, and then we'll have a little introductory discussion here, but go ahead and read item number 2, please.
Item number 2, public hearing and first reading ordinance for zone change 1056, High Sierra subdivision. Zoning Commission recommends denial.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, you heard that there was a request to withdraw this. Normally we would have a presentation and a public hearing. In theory, we could dispense with that. I guess my recommendation is that because we're all together, and this is an opportunity for the developer to learn a little bit more about what you're thinking, the public's thinking, even if there is a later withdrawal, that we get some sort of a call it brief presentation by staff. That's the direction we'll move, and just following the usual procedure. But if you wanted to shortcut that, I just wanted you to know that we could have a motion on the procedural issue, but otherwise we'll move ahead with a short presentation. Councilmember Boyette?
Mayor, I move that we remove item number 2, the public hearing and first reading ordinance of zone change 1056.
Okay.
And number 3,
Or to allow and I assume by that you mean to withdraw or allow the
withdrawal.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Kennedy. I'm gonna ask staff to comment a little bit on the procedure here, if that's okay. But Councilmember Boyette, did you wanna?
Well, we've done this many times where applicants have asked if their application been withdrawn, and we've always said, sure, why not?
Okay, and it's just a,
Question about that.
and so that's the motion. It's sort of a procedural motion at this point, so we'll have discussion on the motion. Councilmember Shaw.
I'm inclined to support it because that's what we've done in the past. I needed some clarification. Have they formally asked to withdraw it?
We'll ask staff to clarify that.
So, okay, so we don't know.
Well, it's my
Yeah.
understanding they
I
have,
thought it was clear they
and that
had
was
asked
mentioned
to
by,
withdraw it. So
in the
if
report.
they have, I don't know why we would have the public hearing, in my opinion, today.
Fine, let's ask Nicole for confirmation on the withdrawal, et cetera.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. 99% of the time, the City Council allows the applicant to withdraw and votes to accept that request. In the case of zone changes, that has implications for the applicant insofar that they have to wait 4 months before they can bring back another zone change for the same parcel through the entire process. So they would start from the beginning, do a pre-application neighborhood meeting, do an application, have a zoning commission hearing, and then a city council hearing. That allows the applicant a 4-month window. If you proceed with the zone change and it ends up failing to be approved, then the code requires a 12-month waiting period for the applicant to bring back another zoning proposal for the property. So those are the implications. In my experience, there's only been one time, more than 15 years ago, when the council refused to accept a request to withdraw and denied a zone change.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion, Councilmember Owen.
Thank you. Mayor, I'm gonna support this as well, the withdrawal, because I think there's interest in seeing this area redeveloped. So I don't know that it needs to go on a 12-month timeout, but I don't want that to be misunderstood in terms of the seriousness of the neighborhood concerns over this development, because they are very real. I'm hopeful that we can continue working as a Heights neighborhood to solve this problem, but dumping more traffic onto Glen Eagles is not a solution. That is a dangerous intersection with middle schoolers trying to cross the street there. We're going to need alternative traffic strategies. I would encourage a continued thoughtful approach to commercial nodes. There are some in here. We definitely need commercial nodes in the Heights outside of Main Street and little pockets on Wicks. So I think that's a wise strategy, and I hope we keep seeing it as a way to mitigate some traffic in the area. But the risks and safety issues surrounded of the intersection of Glen Eagles, Governors, and Wicks are very serious. And so I just hope that even though we're allowing the withdrawal, at least I hope that council will allow the withdrawal tonight. There's a lot of work to do. It's important we develop this area, but we need to be really strategic and thoughtful. And I hope those concerns are heard. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Councilmember Shaw.
Nicole, you can just nod your head, but is that a confirmation that what the developer wants is to withdraw the application? That's what they would like to do?
Yes, that's what they would.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Very good. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd echo what Councilmember Owen has said. I am concerned about developing commercial nodes too far out. I know that we need to get commercial nodes in certain areas, but we have a lot of open space in the core of the city. Commercial nodes need to happen in development. And so I'm just concerned this is getting ahead of itself a little bit, especially, and it appears to be more along a collector instead of an arterial. And so I just wanted to voice my opposition to it. I would have actually voted and agreed to deny this tonight if it came up for denial. So if it is going to be going as a withdrawal, I just hope they engage the neighborhood more about what's going on and how to better build this. The other thing is I didn't like the transitional housing in this as I saw it. So again, it skips some transitions in there, and I believe there needs to be a better ability, as Councilmember Boyette said, making sure that we're not putting large buildings next to people's homes, because those people, they've invested, most of their life in their home, and that's all they got. And so it's really important that we respect what they've done in where they located and help try to preserve that neighborhood and as best as possible and transition that density from low density to higher density without impacting those existing areas. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Rasplater?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My comment on this, coming from working in the industry is this is forever the chicken and the egg conversation with respect to traffic and infrastructure support. And the reality is we don't have the money to pay for the infrastructure without the development. And if we don't approve the development, we don't have the money to make the improvements. If we approve it, there is a lag by the time we get to the point of taking on the traffic improvements. This isn't just a Heights thing. This is a West End thing. It's a Midtown thing. It's a South Side. It's a development problem. And if we are going to start looking at denial of applications like this where we have density, and there is no doubt about it that putting these commercial nodes inside neighborhoods will potentially add some traffic, but it also reduces traffic because it brings services to neighborhoods and it pulls people. I mean, the entire West End is a case study about this very fact, and it's the biggest problem we have with Rimrock and Grand and Central, frankly. Everybody's got to drive 3 miles into town to get to a grocery store or anything of any kind of service or restaurant or bar or casino. We've got to be mindful of that as we make these decisions, and we also have to be mindful of these areas as we lay out our capital improvements plan and work with Public Works. I mean, we've got to be better about working with Public Works and identifying these corridors in areas of growth in our city and making sure that we're preemptively investing in our infrastructure improvements so that we minimize the impact to the best we can what these developments bring. I mean, we're going to make some significant investments on the West End in Rimrock and Grand over the next 5 years, which are going to open that up and alleviate the vast majority of the problems that we have with traffic. Is it going to fix it for everybody? No. But we also need to look at the Heights in our CIP and some of these developing and growing areas in the Heights and make sure that we're putting that effort in the coming years in the Heights to help facilitate this kind of development. We can't say no forever based on traffic. That's not a winning strategy for our city, and it's not a way for us to grow. So, we've got to be mindful of that. It's something I would have supported for that very reason tonight. I understand the traffic issues and I understand the concerns, but we can't say no because of traffic all the time. We have to come with solutions, and if that means we've got to work with Public Works to come up with strategies to invest in areas that are growing in our community that maybe not be the worst condition, but are the areas that are gonna see growth and economic activity, then that's a decision that the policy body needs to make, and it's a conversation that's worth us having. So as we go into the next year, I think that's something that we need to be talking about and discussing with Public Works.
Very good. Further discussion, Councilmember Bernice.
Mayor, I'd echo what Councilmember Blair said. In fact, I think the council does need to look at the policy on how traffic studies are created and set the standards, because we find in certain areas that maybe those policies are not set correctly enough for the traffic, whether it's schools or hospitals, zones and stuff like that, where there needs to be a different set of policies for development requirements when you're impacting those areas. And so I think Councilman Ryan is right on track, and hope to see that come forward.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll just comment. My comments earlier in asking or suggesting that we have a presentation was not to have a vote for denial. I certainly support allowing the developer to withdraw this. I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to discuss some of the merits, and we're doing exactly that in this context, so that's good. My own concerns or questions about on the merits were just general frustration, the predictability of the many comments against this project. It's extremely unpopular, but this isn't a popularity contest, and they were the usual. There's too many kids in our schools. Well, that's the case all over our community. Should we we could solve that problem by just simply having a moratorium on new residential development. there's too much traffic. Even though the most recent study, I think, showed only 49, even with this development, only 49% capacity on High Sierra and 23% or something like that on Glen Eagles, and I might have those numbers backwards. We do need objective standards for how much traffic is too much. Because if it's on my street, and I'm used to playing baseball on my street, one more car is too much traffic. But we need some sort of objective standards, and I think we're far from reaching overcapacity. We are a growing city. It's just going to be a pain, but that's reality. And that the development is too far out. Well, I've been party to many of these fights where the project was too close to residential. So when you put it a quarter mile away in order to reduce some of the impact on existing residential and let people make choices as they move toward the development, because now they know there's going to be more high-dense development out there, and then we're criticized for being too far away. So developers really just can't win. And again, our only real solution is just to have a moratorium on residential development, and I think we all know that would be tremendous folly. So I don't know quite where this is going to go, but it is frustrating when we get into these little fights. We will want to give an opportunity before we have a vote, or at least ask council. We do have the developer here. They've come here. Is there any other development, or I'm sorry, is there any other discussion? I think we should at least give them the courtesy of commenting if they'd like to. Councilmember Gillick.
I was going to say some comments similar to what Councilmember Aspenleiter said as well. I would have supported this tonight. I like the mix of uses. Yes, it adds some traffic, but also takes off a lot too. The people in the surrounding neighborhoods would benefit from that, not having to drive all the way to Main Street, for instance, to find things. So, I think it has some sensitivity and some good merits. Challenging, no doubt about it. But that's where.
Okay, very good. Any other, if there's no objection, I think it would be, at least since this normally would be a public meeting, which will be shortchanged, did the developer have some comment they just wanted to make briefly? Mr. Oakland, if you want to maybe find your way to that microphone, and then others can hear you.
Mayor Cole and ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm Gary Oakland, the Oakland Company's developer of High Sierra, 175 North 27th Street, Suite 900. We've been developing out here for about 25 years. We have a master plan that was developed at that time, approved by the City Council, based on the demands and the needs of the market at that time. It's totally homogeneous. It's all single-family detached residential. And it's been very successful. It's probably the largest master plan community of this type in the state, and we've been doing very well. But I think we can all agree that times have changed over the last 25 years. Circumstances have changed. The economy has changed. The demographics have changed. Interest rates, job locations, the demand for housing in different parts of the community has all changed. If we were to bring High Sierra to you in its present form today, 550 acres, all single-family, detached residential, it get turned down because it doesn't meet the growth plan that was established by the city and enacted by you folks in 2016. So, the 30,000 foot level, why are we here? Why do we want to do this? Well, the market's changed and your rules have changed. Well, let's update High Sierra to be in more conformance with the 2016 growth policy. While there is a variety of housing needs being met out there, and the reason we're out in the corner of the property away from what's been built, and we own all land in between, okay, is that so nobody's getting an apartment building built close to their house. We're phasing the zone from single family to duplexes to fourplexes, and inside that donut around all that would be the ability to put in apartment buildings like you see on the West End. The ones on the West End were built on the edge of town when they were built. Things grow out around it. We had to make some modifications to this plan of working with planning to put the donut all the way around on the north and west side of it because of potential future growth on what is now the Dover Ranch. Okay, so it's not going to be on the edge of town forever. We're already thinking that there's going to be things built outside of where we are, and we've taken that into consideration. Staff has wholeheartedly recommended this program because it meets every one of the criteria in the growth policy. We've done it. We made a few changes. We got the acceptance of the staff, and the comments from the public were greatly reduced after we made those changes. Now, as far as the little commercial note in there, I don't know if that's going to work or not. That's years down the road. The development of these buildings are years down the road because we have to build the project out to it. But we don't want to surprise anybody by letting this all get built out to it and then come in and ask for something to be changed. We want there to be a big gap between where people are owning houses now that we've developed and where we're going to be when we start phasing in some twin homes, fourplexes, and so forth. There's a big distance in there. And if we have this established now, nobody buying a house in that big open space as we progress towards it is going to be surprised. There were comments made, well, we don't want those kind of people living in the Heights. Well, there's a variety of housing needs that don't all require a single-family detached home. There are single people, there's elderly people, there's people that just can't afford the full, two-car garage, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms house. So that product exists in the West End. I think it's been good for the West End. We think the Heights should be able to participate in that kind of housing mix. And it's in conformance with the 2016 policy that didn't exist when we laid it out to begin with. And again, I point out, if we came in with it all homogeneous like it is now, you'd turn us down for that. So I was very surprised. In all the history of all the decades we've done projects in this community, we've never been turned down. Okay, because we provide projects that meet the criteria. We follow the rules. I was taken aback when staff suggests and recommends approval and the zoning commission went astray from that. There should be some level of predictability from the part of the community, whether it be a developer or any other citizen. And if you follow the rules and you go by the regulations, you should expect a positive outcome. It shouldn't be, a free-for-all at that point. We spent a lot of money developing this plan to get it this far, and to have it termed thumbs down by no reference to the growth policy, but just individual likes and dislikes, as was pointed out here earlier. That's not really a solid way to run a city or a business. I don't think it's fair to businesses when you have a policy and then you follow the policy and then it doesn't work out properly. So for that reason, we came in to ask for the changes to update the project to be in conformance with the current market and the current growth policy to provide the Heights with a mix of housing opportunities. And we can sit there and build out another 900 houses just like they are now. There's going to be over 2,000 houses out there. We've got 700 to 900 left to go. We can do that. We'll make money. But I think it would be better for the community to have a little mix out there.
Very good, Mr. Oko.
I'd be happy to answer any questions if I didn't address anybody's concerns.
I don't, Councilmember Boyette.
Will you be coming back to us in 4 months?
Sure. I mean, we asked to be withdrawn tonight because we were so shocked at the result of the zoning commission. We thought, well, we're probably dead in the water. Then we had some inclinations that a few people thought, well, that didn't seem right. Maybe we should hear this out. So we came in here prepared to do a full presentation. And if you'd like to have us do the full presentation, I would then at the end respectfully request approval of the project. Because we follow the rules.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. That's not the motion that's before us. So
thank you for your time.
I recognize Councilmember Shaw.
Actually have a question for her.
I'm sorry, Council,
Yeah,
or
can I-
Mr. Oakland,
So I think you understand, I don't disagree with a lot of the things you said. I came in here also ready to vote yes. I can't tell you if you've got a majority here or not that would vote yes on the project. So if this motion passes, it would be withdrawn. You could come back in 4 months, try again. If we do as kind of you'd suggest, if the motion fails and we do as you suggested, it's a gamble for you guys of if you wanna take that risk. So just a process wise, that's sort of where we're at.
and I think he understands that.
Yeah,
Was-
okay.
I didn't hear a question in that, I heard a comment.
Sorry, so my question, thank you. So my question for you is, is your recommendation to have us withdraw this? That's the motion that's before us. So is that what you would recommend at this point?
I would just assume you
That
hear
you
us
guys
out.
would like? So you're
I'd just assume
saying,
be heard.
okay, I'm guess I'm getting conflicting information from staff and from you. I would just wanna know, do you want this withdrawn? Or,
We came in here, I think the staff came in here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think staff came in here prepared to do the presentation.
I know you're prepared for it, but what I'm asking is that the desired path? Is it clear what I'm asking? Do you wanna jump in, Mayor, if you've?
Is there a request to, we are operating on the assumption there is a request to withdraw this proposal tonight. So that is what we're operating on. We'll have further discussion. You may want to kibitz amongst yourselves, but that's our assumption. If that's not the case, we want to know about it. I recognize Councilmember Ripsis, Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Oakland, I was just curious, I was surprised to see in the staff's write-up or one of the reports that Annandale is listed as a minor arterial. To me, it was just a residential road and I never would have guessed that. But possibly heading west all the way until it meets Alkali Creek eventually. How much of that space where Annandale is scheduled to extend is within the High Sierra subdivision?
A lot of it. And we built part of Annandale now on the far end of the property.
The far eastern side.
The far eastern
I'm talking
side,
on the
and it will
western,
go all the way
on the
through.
western side where it will go eventually all the way to Alkali Creek. I mean, you could potentially see that building out as an arterial with lots of services all along that stretch. Is that within your realm of?
One of the
future
reasons we've
vision?
located the project where it is in that particular site is that we have a confluence of Annandale, Glen Eagles, and High Sierra. These are all bigger streets, and the traffic people determined that we're well under in terms of usage on those roads with the development of the project as we have it currently.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep following the order that I've already recognized, except for Councilmember Kennedy says he's gonna call the question, and I don't have the choice to recognize you.
Mayor, if I could, I wanna just express a little caution here, because I think there are, I hear what you're saying, and I wanna find a way to work through this project. To all of a sudden decide to approve this tonight, I think would raise a lot of heartburn in the neighborhood. There was an email sent to council on the 16th of January indicating that the developer has elected to withdraw and will be here tonight to ask to withdraw. The public knows that. This was noticed with a recommended motion of either denying this or withdrawing it. I'd be concerned that neighbors in the community who otherwise would have been here would feel misled. I don't want to express that I don't think we could solve the neighborhood concerns here, or that we don't need development in this area, because we do need development. But I would be concerned about sort of a pivot at this point in the evening, just given, I think, the number of neighbors who said, oh, I guess I don't have to go. Which I understand is their risk, it's their risk to bear, but I would just highlight that there was an email to council indicating that there had been a decision to withdraw.
Yeah, I'd have a similar concern.
I'm gonna call a question.
Okay, well, the motion that's before you is to accept the withdrawal request. What's unclear to me is whether the withdrawal request has been withdrawn.
I would respect your decision. To either deny the withdrawal or to accept the withdrawal.
Okay, so what I am hearing is the request to withdraw has not been withdrawn.
Correct.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
motion is to accept the withdrawal, and I call the question.
Okay, And if the request for withdrawal is still out there, that is what's before us. So now what we have to have is a vote on whether to vote. And we need a two-thirds vote. I'm sorry, we need the second. Was there a second? Councilmember Neese seconds the motion to call the question. So we'll now vote on whether to vote. There are 10 of us, so we need, I guess, two-thirds. We'll have to have 7. So if in favor of the motion to proceed with the vote on the merits, please say aye.
Aye. Wait, sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Can you
confused
rephrase
on
that?
that.
Yeah, I was confused on the way you phrased it.
It's to accept the withdrawal.
No,
This is to
This
close
is
the
the vote
debate
on
and
whether
vote.
to vote.
Stop
You've
basic
called the
stuff.
questions, so
Yeah,
we are
sorry.
only voting on whether to vote
Yeah,
on the merits. So we need two-thirds to approve that motion. Is it clear?
yes.
Okay. So if in favor of proceeding to the vote on the merits, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay.
Nay.
One in opposition, Councilmember Gulick, correct? So all other voting in favor, so we will proceed to a vote on the merits. That will only require a majority vote. So the motion that's before you is to permit the withdrawal of the application. So is the motion clear? Okay, so if in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously. So that motion passes, the zone application is considered withdrawn, and I'm sure we'll see you in the future.
Yes, you will. Thank you for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oakland. That concludes item number 2, brings us to item number 3. Tony, would you read item number 3?
Item number 3, public hearing and first reading ordinances amending Billings, Montana City Code, sections 24-411, parking for camping purposes, section 18-1100, graffiti, 1302, civil citations and requirements, 6-1300, display of address numbers, and 13-400, business, occupation, and profession tax.
Very good, thank you. Tina and Todd are our tag team.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The presentation is basically the same as it was for the work session, January 6th. The only change I have is the overview at this point. We first presented this information on January 6th. Everyone that was here was in agreement to moving it forward to public hearing and first reading. It is the 5 ordinances that Tony read off. The resolution amendment, there's some language in there that we would need to amend that matches the section of the graffiti report, just so that they're the same. That does not require a public hearing, so it will be brought to you February 2nd. So the first one will be 24-411, parking for camping purposes. You should have in your packet a red line version and a clean version of this ordinance amendment. And it essentially gives law enforcement a little bit more help with addressing non-motorized vehicles, as well as replacing tourist park with the MCA definition of a campground. And I think we have to do these all.
I'm sorry, say that again, Tina, before I recognize Councilor Denise.
I think we have to do all of these individually, so it's broken out separately.
Okay, so we need a vote on each one of, yeah, okay. So, we'll just take them one at a time and have our votes one at a time. So on 411, I'm gonna recognize Councilmember Neese, but you have a procedure question,
Just
Councilmember?
procedurally, if we do this one at a time, then do we have to have 5 public comment periods?
Yeah,
Would it be
good
better to
point.
do all
It
5
is a public
presentations,
hearing,
have
yeah.
1 comment period and go through motions?
Yeah, can we just have a common presentation? We'll have an opportunity for public comment, all of them. And we'll go back and we'll have individual votes, but can we have one package presentation?
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
I
let's
just
do
told
it
them
that
they
way.
need to be separated out for voting purposes.
Yeah, we'll have separate votes.
So the second one would be the graffiti rewards and reimbursements. It's just that section of the code, but I believe I gave you the entire code because I like to give you the entire thing to read. And the simplicity of it is to change the word accept to approve, accepted to approved, council to administrator. The initial intent was to, and you had also been given a copy of the reward form that was created, was basically, it's an administrative, if someone applies for the reward, it goes through the process of being reviewed, verified, validated, vetted, and then it goes through the administrator for final approval so that we can issue the reward to that person. The resolution will have the same language changes, so you'll see that in February. Civil citations, I'm gonna give that one to you.
Mayor, council members, the amendment that's requested with respect to 1302, some housekeeping matter, as are, I believe, the rest of these amendments that we're seeking here tonight. There has been just a change in the rules as they apply to the service of civil procedure or civil action by publication, and we're simply making sure that the Billings Code lines up with the rules as they're set up by the Montana Supreme Court. And that's the only purpose of this particular.
The next one we have is we get complaints actually for display of address numbers. This is a code that has been a misdemeanor in the past. We wish to change it to a municipal infraction for ease of enforcement, as well as to remove the language of 20 days after the date of such notice. As you recall, when we updated the nuisance code, we have a procedure in there that we use. It's first notice, second notice, then we go to court. And we'd like to stay in line with that as much as possible throughout all of city code. There are going to be exceptions throughout code, but this is one that we thought we could bring in alignment. And these amendments were reviewed by the building official, and they didn't have issue with it. I believe the last one is going to be for business occupation and professional tax. Similar, we want to change this from a misdemeanor to a municipal infraction, and then add the language that each day the violation occurs is a separate offense, so that they can technically be fined daily until they comply, which gives us some tools in the toolbox to help encourage people to do the right thing. This was also approved through finance, and that's the end of the presentation.
Very good, thank you. Questions for Tina or Todd before our public hearing? Are there any questions? Councilmember Denise?
Thank you, Mayor. Tina, going back to the ordinance of the 24-411, the change there where you added non-motorized vehicles, would this section also be able to, I'm assuming that because you're doing that because of like campers, right?
Yes.
And so what about tents? Is tents a different code, or should tents be in here as well?
Tents are actually, it would be an obstruction in the public right of way. So if you leave something in the road, then that is something that can be removed from the public right of way.
I mean, someone could pop up a tent in the middle of a parking lot, right?
Well, we don't allow that in the parking lot.
Okay, so there's somewhere,
That's covered under a different.
So tents are covered under a different code, or sleeping out under the stars, and it's covered a different code. This is mainly just having to do vehicles and stuff like that. Okay, just wanted to make sure that tents didn't need to be added to this. So.
So prior to this, law enforcement was able to deal with those motorized vehicles that were in public areas, but they were not able to do anything with an unattached camper like a lumber pull. That always fell to us, and we had to treat it in a different way. This gives them the flexibility to go out, make contact with that person, and write them the ticket right then.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tina or Todd? Councilmember Rowan?
Not so much a question, just really a compliment that you're finding those areas where we can get something out of the misdemeanor category and into the municipal infraction. I think that's really an important part of improving our overall criminal justice system efficiency. And I'm curious if that's going to be an ongoing process. Do you think there's more opportunities to kind of shift, or is this sort of it?
No, you'll see more.
Fantastic. That's great work. Thank you.
Very good. Other questions? Okay, we'll come back for discussion if there is more, but let's at least open it up for public comment. This is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to comment on these proposed changes to our code, please come forward. Is there any public comment on item number 3? Any public comment on item number 3? This is a public hearing. No one is coming forward. No one's coming forward. We'll close the public hearing. Back to council. Council, Councilmember Boyette?
So I think we need to do one at a time.
We do.
I have a procedural question.
Okay, before.
Are these two not voting because they weren't here for the
They
presentation?
can't.
They can't vote.
Okay, just curious.
I didn't see that they even ducked out. Okay. Okay, Councilmember Boyette, did you have a motion?
Yeah, having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance of section 24-411 parking for camping purposes as recommended by staff.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Any discussion? Okay, if in favor of the motion for approval, item 3A, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with exception of Councilmembers Aspenlider and Kennedy, who stepped out of the meeting. Item 3B, Councilmember Boyette.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance amending section 18-1100 graffiti as recommended by staff.
Second by Councilmember Tidswell, I saw. For the record, Councilmember Aspenlider and Councilmember Kennedy are back with us. So the motion is for approval of item 3B. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion for approval of 3B, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
They
didn't see the presentation.
So I didn't
Are
vote.
their votes counting?
No, I didn't vote for that reason.
Okay, no vote by, or an absence of vote. We'll call it recusal. Councilmember Aspenlider, and same with Councilmember Kennedy?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, and so that completes item 3B. Item 3C, Councilmember Neese?
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance amendment section 1302 civil citations and requirements as recommended by staff.
Second by Councilmember Boyette. Okay, any discussion? Before we proceed to a vote, Councilmember Aspenlider and Kennedy are present for the motion and the discussion. Was there some issue about their ability to vote on this one and later ones?
Well, you make the deciding factor, but they weren't here for the presentation.
Any other presentation? I'm sorry,
Councilmember
I was not.
Kennedy left at a
Kennedy
certain
was.
time. I don't remember what he left.
So I'm going to kind of turn that to Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Kennedy, how did you want to proceed on this?
I'm gonna vote.
You do want to vote, okay? You were here for enough of the presentation. All right, and it's fairly non-controversial, the reality is. So, okay, we'll proceed to a vote. Is there any discussion on item 3C? Not seeing any. So if in favor of the motion for approval, item 3C, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with the exception of Councilmember Aspenlider, who recused himself for absence. 3D, is there a motion? Councilmember Boyette.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance amending section 6-1300 display of address numbers as recommended by staff.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Any discussion? Okay, motions for approval. Item 3D, if in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously, and please clarify, Councilmember Aspenlider, again, recusing himself. And Councilmember Kennedy, you did vote. Correct. Okay, so unanimous with the exception of Councilmember Aspenlider. Item 3E, Councilmember Gulick will spread the wealth here.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance amending section 13-400 business, occupation, and profession tax as recommended by staff.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with the exception of Councilmember Aspenleiter, who did not vote. That concludes item 3. Councilmember Boyette.
Just for a point of order, I want to make sure that Tony realizes that the council member is here.
And I had put that on the record when Councilmember Tisdale came in, right after, or right before public comment, I think, the first public comment. Right. All right, very good. That concludes item number 3, brings us to item number 4. Tony, would you read item number 4?
Item number 4, Mayor's appointment for Ward 3, Councilmember Ruffles.
Thank you very much. Council members, pursuant to, I'm your presenter tonight. Is it okay if I stay here and don't go up to the podium? Okay, thank you. Pursuant to section 3.09C of our charter, it's my privilege to offer for your consideration my appointment to fill the remaining 11 months of the Ward 3 vacancy created by former Councilmember Denise Joy's elevation or demotion, depending on your point of view, to the Montana House of Representatives that occurred on January 6th of this year. My choice for that position is Tamara Jean Rogers, TJ for short. Pursuant to section 3.09, vacancies on the city council are to be filled by appointment of the mayor with the advice and consent of the majority of the remaining members of the city council. It's therefore my intention to put my recommendation to you in the form of a motion. Ask for a second. Then, if there is a second, entertain any discussion and then proceed to vote on the motion. If the motion is successful, TJ would be, or Ms. Rogers would be sworn in at the beginning of our work session meeting in 1 week, February 3rd. But before I do that, I would like to thank several individuals and groups in particular. First, I'd like to recognize former Councilmember Joy and thank her for her 7 years of service on this council. Councilmember Joy began her service not long after her father, former longtime police officer and Bighorn County Sheriff William Joy, was killed in 2018 as a result of a carjacking. Those sad events did not keep her from performing her duties on the city council, and she was always a staunch advocate for law enforcement and public safety. I also understand, based on something former Councilmember Danny Chiriki said, that Denise had a perfect attendance record during her 7 years, meaning that she never missed a single city council meeting during that time. We wish former Councilmember Joy all the very best in Helena. I'd also like to recognize and thank the 13 residents of Ward 3 who had the courage to put their names in the ring for this seat. As I've said several times before, this was an extremely capable and well-respected group of individuals. Each one brought unique talents, life experiences, and skills that would have been valuable for this council, for Ward 3, and for our community. But unfortunately, I could only pick one. If I could have, I might have suggested putting them all in a big blender, but I don't think that would have gone over very well with them. So next, I want to thank the members of this city council and the public who offered their input on the respective strengths of each candidate. Many of you council members met with individual candidates and their supporters and reported back to me with your impressions. You also filled out the informal survey form that I distributed, in which I looked at carefully before I made my decision. As for the public, generally, I believe that this was a uniquely transparent process and that it resulted in an unprecedented amount of public participation. That began with a public meeting here and meet and greet on January 16th that was very well attended and that generated a lot of public input. In fact, I started off by printing each email that I received in favor of a particular candidate or another, but I had to abandon that idea once I'd used up several hundred sheets of paper and my notebook wouldn't hold anymore. So to the members of the public who participated, thank you for caring about your community enough to get involved. Please be assured that your voices were heard, and they were very important. Lastly, I want to specifically acknowledge and thank TJ Rogers for her willingness to not just put her name in the hat, but to also serve for the remainder of Council Member Joy's term. I guarantee that it will be like drinking from a fire hose, but I'm confident that every member of the City Council here and staff will work hard to make sure that that transition is as successful and easy as possible. For anyone who doesn't know TJ's background already, I should mention that she is the operations and house manager for Love and Sunshine Ministries, which provides services for homeless, pregnant young women and mothers. She also has an extensive experience and background as a freelance journalist, telecommunications manager, and working with several other nonprofit organizations in our community. She was named as Volunteer of the Year in 2022 by Billings Young Marines, for example. I think that TJ's background, optimistic personality, and pragmatic outlook will make it possible for her to listen to and work with a broad spectrum of city residents, with staff and with members of the City Council. TJ was identified as the number 1 or number 2 choice by the vast majority of City Council members in the informal survey that I conducted, and I believe that she is a consensus candidate who will appeal to the largest number of Ward 3 residents. So with that, I would make a motion to approve my appointment of TJ Rogers to fill the remaining term of former Ward 3 Councilmember Denise Joy. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Neese. With that, I open it up for discussion before a vote. Is there any discussion? I know I went on long, but I didn't go on that long. Okay. All right, I don't want to cut off discussion. So I will proceed to a vote if there is no further discussion. Okay, so the motion is for approval of TJ Rogers. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. No going back now. All right, well, thank you very much. That concludes item 4, brings us to item number 5. Tony, would you read item number 5?
Item number 5, council appointments to community boards and/or committees and council subcommittees. Staff recommends City Council determine which council members can fill vacancies to serve on various community boards and/or committees and council subcommittees.
Very good. Chris joined us at the very end of that last item. So we're on item number 5, Chris. I can either describe this or you can. There's essentially 2 things that we got to deal with: filling Denise Joy's spots, and then the Beartooth RC&D. Do you want to?
You got it. I think that they've seen the memo, and those are the 2 slots that Denise held, and then Councilmember Kennedy requested someone fill the slot on the RC&D.
So the recommendation was to just slot TJ into the same positions that Denise had. I've mentioned that to TJ. She's fine with that. She's nodding her head. So that's that issue. And then Kennedy asked to step down off the Beartooth RC&D board, but we would need a volunteer to step into that position. Councilmember Boyette?
If all else fails, no one else wants it all. Just to have a marker for this.
Okay, so Councilmember Boyette's willing to serve, but he also indicated he didn't want to deprive you of if this has been your lifetime dream to serve on that board, he would step aside. Is there anybody who wants to compete with, arm wrestle with Councilmember Boyette for that well-paid position, which doesn't pay anything? Okay, I'm not seeing any battle on that one. So, council, we could probably wrap these into one motion, or Councilmember Shaw?
So I would actually like to say, I would actually like to serve on the Community Development Board. I've been waiting for Denise to step down.
Oh.
But I serve on the Bright and Beautiful Board, so I wonder if maybe TJ would be interested in doing that and doing a swap. But anyway, I would like to do that. I've been kind of wanting to take that over, but I didn't want to push out Councilmember Joy.
Yeah. I guess I almost say that's between the two of you. Is there, I mean, the rest of us have any interest in that? So, let's get okay, well, we could,
I just wanted to mention that in case it's all packaged together.
Make a procedural question.
let's talk about procedural questions. And again, we don't have a motion on the table at this point yet.
So first of all, I mean, who serves one, I'm not gonna volunteer for any of these, so that's on the table there. But Tina has actually not been sworn in as a council member, so she technically, I think, unless Gina can knows, we can't really nominate her for any, can we?
I should have clarified that any approval of this would be conditioned on her actually becoming a council member. You're right, we can't make that assignment until she's a council member, right? But I think we could make the assignment contingent on her becoming a council member. And Gina's kind of nodding her head, you know, it's an internal thing, so. Councilor Ripsis?
I guess I would just say I would support Councilmember Shaw's desire to be on that board. I think our newest council member is going to have enough coming at her right off the bat to also jump into that board and try to understand, because I think they get the thickest packet out of anybody when they come onto that board in terms of reading. So I think that might make more sense for this particular case, but if you guys can make eyes and figure this out before we have to make a motion, that would be good.
I'm seeing some nodding heads and thumbs up by TJ and Councilmember Shaw. So it looks like that's acceptable to them. Councilmember Boyette?
So do you need a substitute
We need
motion?
some sort of a motion.
So we'll change it around to the Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development would go from Denise Joy to Mike Boyette. Community Development Board would go to Kendra Shaw. And the Legislative Affairs and Bright and Beautiful would go to the new council member effective February 3rd. TJ.
Okay, motion, is the motion clear? Okay. Councilmember Ripsis indicates a second. So you have a motion before you. Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Aspenleiter?
Councilmember Boyette, maybe you could convince Beartooth RC&D to actually show their face in the same room as us, not through a camera when they're going to ask us for $30,000. I'll be appreciative from this councilman.
Okay. Councilmember Boyette, you want to respond to Councilmember Neese?
Well, I had extensive conversation with Councilmember Kennedy about his role on that committee, and I think there is need for some change. I totally agree with that.
Very good.
Can I ask
Councilmember Neese?
Did we ever officially approve or appoint Councilmember Aspenleiter to the Legislative and Local Affairs Committee?
No.
So I guess I would amend that motion to include adding Councilmember.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe I'll let you guys restate your motion instead of doing an amendment to it.
Well, I want to include that in my substitute motion.
Okay, so we have sort of a friendly motion to add Councilmember Aspenleiter to the Legislative Affairs Committee and Local Affairs.
Correct.
And the second was Councilmember Ripsis. He gives thumbs up, so he's good with that. Okay. Is the motion still clear? Okay, ready for a vote? Okay, so if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes unanimously. That concludes item number 5 and brings us to initiatives, or I'm sorry, public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment this evening on something that was not on our agenda tonight? If so, you are welcome to come to the podium and tell us what you're thinking. Is there any public comment on anything not on our agenda tonight? No one is coming forward, so we will close that public comment period and move on to our final item, which is council initiatives. We do have Councilmember Kennedy's initiative. You got a copy of that paperwork before. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Aspenleiter, or Councilmember Kennedy. And just a reminder, this is not on the merits of anything. This is whether to put this item on a future agenda, we'd need to clarify kind of timing, business meeting, work session, is there a more specific ask, those sorts of things. But Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes, I would ask that it be put on in 2 weeks at a regular board meeting. And just to talk about the, what it is a savings. This is, there's 20 department heads that are receiving a stipend, a car allowance, and, you know, if you looked at it, and I'm just going off of, I'm not sure, Chris, what the mileage is. We go by the federal mileage at 58 cents. At 58 cents at 100 miles a month is $58. I don't know if some of them travel a little bit more than 100 miles or not, but if everyone out of those department heads traveled 100 miles during the month, that would be a total of 1,160 compared to 8,000 a month on the stipend. So there would be a savings on this and a savings of $6,840 a month, or close to $82,000 a year. All I'm asking is to do away with the car allowance. I understand the what Gina wrote and what Kendra is looking at. All I'm trying to do is save dollars. And this is not denying any of these department heads that they would not be reimbursed for mileage. And that's, Chris, up to you to let them turn in their mileage and sign off on it or whatever. But they would be paid for the mileage that the actual mileage, instead of a stipend each month. And so I would just ask that the council vote tonight to put it on in 2 weeks on our an agenda item on our regular agenda.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. If I could just ask one question, what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is because you said on a regular business meeting, you are asking for a motion to actually effectuate this change, not to have some discussion, information, work session type information gathering.
Correct.
Okay, so this would actually go to the merits and make that change.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We need, I guess, a motion if you.
I would make that motion.
Okay, so that's in the form of the motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Owen. Discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Kennedy sort of done that. Councilmember Owen, I'll give you the opportunity for your second, then I'll recognize Councilmember Boyette.
No, I think this is an important thing to talk about. I think it's something that a number of us have talked about having a conversation about, and so I think this is something I'm supportive of, and I might just reserve, Mayor, with your permission, the chance to comment a little bit later.
Sure. Councilmember Boyette?
Mayor, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we put this on a work session and give the staff time to respond. I'd rather have it on a work session so we can just debate it and talk about it versus a business.
Is that for, okay, so you made the motion. Was that for a particular work session or for a time to be set by staff, or you?
Determined by the staff, a work session by the staff.
Okay. All right, so that's a substitute motion, or amendment, actually, I guess. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Gulick. Okay, did you have any other discussion?
No, other
to your
than I
motion,
think it'd
or?
be more fitting at a work session than a business session.
Okay, Councilmember Gulick, did you have any discussion on the substitute motion?
Yeah, no, I am interested in well, I guess I would also put that we do have a lot of initiatives, but it does seem to me that this is not so large, and it should be something that's done as we go into the budgeting season, so we use some other discussion sometime this spring or winter.
Okay, further discussion, Councilmember Shaw?
I wanna be clear, I'm not gonna vote for this. I do think our initiatives have gotten out of control. Just, that's my personal opinion, but I will just share that I fundamentally don't understand why this doesn't go through the Budget and Finance Committee. This is a budget issue for the next budget year. And it seems like we're just jumping the gun to come back to council to have us vote on it, and we created those committees for a reason. So to me, I don't understand why it's coming to us without going through that process. That's where I'm at. And I still have some legality questions that you can read the email of Gina's response, which I appreciated, Gina, thank you. Just trying to understand it a little bit more, but that's not cleared up in my mind that we're not entering into a legal question mark area, and I think that could easily be taken care of in the Budget Committee before it comes to this body to vote on something or make a determination. So that would be my pitch for slowing down the initiatives and not approving this tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Ripsis?
I also have no intention of supporting this in any variation. This is too deep into the weeds of specific employee benefit packages that council really, under our charter, has no business delving into. I get that there's budget impact, and so basically anything with budget impact we could say is policy, but this just isn't. This has no business in front of council. If Councilmember Kennedy wanted to make a show of this, otherwise he could have brought it before the Budget Committee meeting. He said so a couple weeks ago. So I have no intention of supporting this in any form.
Okay, further discussion? I'm gonna comment. I sketched out for my own sake what some of the things that would have to be looked into as part of this process, which I think would take some time. So this isn't necessarily an exclusive list, nor maybe you may not agree with all of these, but one, it does seem that as part of this process, we would need to do some research on whether to buy city-owned vehicles for shared usage. And develop written policies for buying city-owned vehicles, or not. But if we didn't buy the city-owned vehicles for use, then I think we'd have to look into, can the city require employees to use their own private vehicles for our benefit, for the city's benefit? I think we probably can require that, but we'd want to look into that. We'd also want to have MMIA advise on whatever insurance coverage implications are of both our existing policy, but any sort of changed policy, I guess. We would want to research the likely cost for this reimbursement by miles. It's 80 cents. Now is the IRS rate. What's that? 70. Or I'm sorry, 70, yes. And then what kind of savings and make those calculations. Of course, we'd want to look at how many miles would likely be charged, but also we have to take into account the employee time of keeping track of it and the finance department time for processing these reimbursements. Would that be much? I don't know. Probably not. Also, of course, we'd have to just look at the impact on the employees. This is a form of compensation for them, and how much would they be? Their pay would be reduced. There's also tax implications. It's actually beneficial, I think, to get paid just reimbursement, because you don't have to pay taxes on that. You do have to pay tax on your employee or your compensation. And also just what's a typical vehicle reimbursement rate. I just did a quick Google search for what it's worth, and something floating on the internet, it's about $600 a month is fairly typical in the private sector. I have no idea if that's reasonable or not. And then if we're going to reduce status or reduce compensation of employees, we kind of need to know, does that put them below market? So we need to go through a real process of deciding, because it could be, if it's substantial, that where they're at market-wise. So, and then I'd be curious to know what other Montana cities do. I think it's a fairly typical process, but that would just be interesting information. That may be too deep in the weeds too, but it means, in my mind, I'm hesitant to distract staff from those kind of questions personally as well. So further discussion now on the motion, which is to send this to a work session. Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. it can go to the work session, it can go, it's eventually gonna come here and you're either gonna vote it up or you're gonna vote it down. You're gonna have to start looking at this budget and deciding where you're going to cut. And this is one that's a no-brainer. I worked across the street for many years. As a county commissioner, I didn't get this kind of money every month, and I filled out the mileage. Maybe we ought to have the department heads do a mileage for a whole month to see what the actual costs are. Maybe that's, this whole thing about buying new vehicles and things like that, all of this is a big smokescreen. Decide where you're going to start cutting the budget, because we don't have a lot of money to go forward. Chris, you told me that a while back when you said, we don't know if we have enough money to keep on affording more officers on the street. Well, let's start looking. You guys voted me down on the RC&D. We decided that we have a big heart and we're going to give $13,000 over to them, which we don't get a lot of service from. We didn't get anybody that just jumped to get on that. The other piece is, where are you going to start looking to cut in this budget? These are small things. These are low-hanging fruit. And all I'm saying is, we can go through all of this over and over and talk about it, and then you can approve of it. But eventually, yes, it will, Kendra, go back to the budget committee, and we will have to cut the budget somewhere. So if this is where we want to go, that's fine.
And I'm fine with the budget committee wrestling with these perfectly legitimate questions. Councilmember Owen.
So now I'm gonna pick up my chance to say something that I didn't before.
Sure.
If Councilmember Kennedy doesn't care about this being on a work session, I don't. If they wanna change it, send it to the budget committee, I don't care. But here's what I'm concerned about. Whether we talk about this at a work session, or whether we talk about this in the budget committee, we as council members deserve some technical advice that is unbiased, not an advocacy for a position. Having the advocacy is fine. If the city administrator supports it or doesn't support it, it's fine to hear that. But there ought to be some independent or objective information provided to council members to make policy decisions. And budget is a policy decision. We have heard that when Dan Clark has come here and trained. Council's authority is at the utmost when it comes to setting the budget. And to say that council couldn't do something like no funds in this budget shall be expended for this purpose, I just don't think is accurate. I'm concerned that what we're getting is advocacy from people who don't believe in this, rather than technical advice, which is, if you want to do this, council, here are the legal and appropriate ways to do it. What we're getting is a position, and a position is fine. The city administrator is entitled to have one. But we also need to have some independent advice if we're going to go into a budget conversation or going to go into a work session. I think council members deserve legal, fiscal, objective support for initiatives so that we can make the policy decisions that council is entitled to make. So however we proceed to a deeper conversation on this, I would hope that we can count on staff to get that support and information as well as the position of the city administrator to whatever extent it exists, because I'm very concerned about the email that I saw today.
Which email?
I'm sorry, between you and Gina.
Okay. On the legal issues that or questions that Kendra posed. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. So again, the motion is send this to a work session. Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Denise?
Yeah,
And then
so-
let's move to a vote. I assume we're getting close,
To be
right?
clear, that I mean, I can't speak for Gina, but I asked questions that she responded to.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm concerned with the responses, is what I was trying to say, not you asking the questions.
I
Of course
see,
you're
yeah,
entitled
I'm
to
gonna
ask
say,
questions.
I tried to be unbiased,
No,
but
you
it
were
comes-
fine.
But anyway, I didn't feel like Gina, anyway.
Yeah,
I'm gonna leave Gina out of
I think
this,
it's fine.
but I'm just, to the larger point, I just wanna say, I understand what Councilmember Kennedy is saying. I also understand how the budget needs to be looked at and maybe cut potentially as we look at it in terms of a broader picture. But we established, in my opinion, the Budget and Finance Committee for a reason, and that's where this belongs, in my opinion. So again, I'm not gonna support this in
Very
any
good.
form.
Councilmember Denise?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Jennifer had to say, a lot of it was said on here, but I don't support this motion only because there's no time frame. And I do believe it probably does belong in the budget committee. They can actually then kick it to a work session. And so I would recommend that you, I would ask that you change your motion to put it to a budget committee, so the budget committee can control the timing of it and when it has to go to work session, and then the budget committee can work with the staff. Because if you say staff, it's unending. We could see it in 3 years from now. So I think it needs to go to the budget committee. But that's.
Anybody? I agree. That makes logical sense that we go to the budget committee first, then it comes back to a work session.
Okay, I'm seeing some consensus both on the original and, okay, so.
To go to budget.
Okay, so let's, we'll make all those substitute motions, send this to the budget committee.
Right.
And,
Which in turn will debate it and then bring it to a work session.
okay, we'll treat that as a substitute motion. Is there a second to that? Councilmember Shaw?
I'm not gonna second it, but I can get on board with that,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so Councilmember Owen. Okay, so that's the motion that's before the table. I think there's gonna be a large consensus here. Before we vote though, Chris, you had your vote up, your hand up. Did you wanna weigh in?
So as your professional staff, it is my and our responsibility to give you both the answers to your questions in an unbiased manner and to make recommendations. Not everything comes with a recommendation, but I'm getting this sense like these two things are not supposed to be happening. And what the city attorney, I believe, responded to was legal questions. We didn't advocate what you should or shouldn't do. At the end of the day, I understand you can cut anything in the budget, you can control any component of the budget. For sure. There is some inaccurate information. There are not 20 directors. Also, it includes the 2 judges. And so there are other people, and yes, there's one, usually in most organizations, police and fire, in our case, it's not the case, that the city does have a vehicle for them. But from time to time, we make budgetary decisions in cooperation with that director saying, you know what, I don't want a replacement vehicle. Our budget's pretty tight, let's use that vehicle for a battalion chief or some other function. I'd rather take an allowance. So when we get into those budget conversations, that's what I'd like to talk about. The full implications of the impact of it. And just, I guess, my primary reason for stating is it is our responsibility to answer your questions, give you professional advice, and we respect whatever decision the majority of the council directs, we will carry through and follow through with.
Okay, let's move to a vote. Chris, can I just ask that staff, as a personal request, if it doesn't before the budget committee, generate some sort of written document with the basic facts so that people are operating from the same set of, is that consistent with your?
Agreed. The reason for me giving you the initiative list and the goals and objectives is it is just time. And I don't want to overstate like this is an extremely time-consuming thing, but anything that gets added to the list, somebody has to do it. So
Sure.
We would gladly provide whatever information of the baseline, of who gets them, what would be the cost implications, who otherwise maybe had a vehicle provided by the city and is not having a vehicle provided, that would be a legitimate question, but it's not the case that all would have ordinarily received a vehicle from the city. But some, police chief, fire chief, some other directors, very, very commonly, a city vehicle is what is provided. And what we have is a whole kind of maceration of what happens over decades in our system, so.
Okay. Ready to vote? Okay, motion is referred to the budget committee. If in favor, say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion passes, exception of Councilmember Ripsis. That concludes the initiative. That process will move forward. Thank you. And with that, Councilmember Boya.
I just want to congratulate you on having 3 meetings in a row that ended by 7:30.
I agree.
Well, we could
Tell
hold this
TJ
on
not
for
to get
15
used to
minutes.
that.
All right, with that, we are adjourned.